The report that I was part of, and I led the writing team for, was produced by the panel of experts for the Committee on Food Security, which is a UN committee. The Food Security Committee is obviously concerned about food security, and one of the early questions that they asked after their recent reformation was, what are the consequences of climate change for food security? And our answer is they're quite large. The report that we released looked both at the adaptation concerns. Well, what is vulnerability to climate change today? What is the range of potential vulnerabilities in the future to climate change, with a focus on small farmers in the poor and developing countries? What can we do to adapt to the almost inevitable climate change effects that will occur in agriculture? But then also, what role can agriculture play in contributing to mitigation, reduction in greenhouse gas emissions? So agriculture has a broad range of activities that it can both be affected by climate change but contribute to part of the solution.
And you may have said already, but just remind us, what percentage of emissions does agriculture contribute?
Agriculture, broadly defined, contributes about 1/3 of total greenhouse gas emissions. That's its contribution to deforestation, plus direct emissions from agricultural activities such as cattle raising and irrigated agriculture.
And do you sense that there are there definite possibilities to cap that?
There are on the mitigation side, there are definite ways in which agriculture can contribute to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So changes in practices at the farm level, both in rice farming and in livestock agriculture, but more generally activities that increase the amount of carbon in the soil. A key question for our research, though, and the paper that we produced, was whether or not the activities that you do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture would harm food security. And the answer is there are many opportunities for synergies, if you will, activities that you can do both to capture CO2 out of the atmosphere and put it in the ground, reduce methane emissions, but also to increase food security.
Well, give us some examples.
Okay, some examples. Crops really respond well to having more carbon in the soil. It holds nutrients better, it increases water retention, and you get higher yields. So you get a win-win. More carbon in the soil takes it out of the atmosphere, and it means more crop production, more resilience to the increases in variability that are almost inevitable. What about nitrous oxide emissions from irrigated rice? So nitrous oxide is an extremely potent greenhouse gas, but the nitrogen comes from the application of chemical fertilizers to the field. That's money that farmers spend to put nitrogen into the field that then goes up into the atmosphere in form of a negative gas. So we can come up with new technologies, some of them already exist, to both increase productivity, reduce farmers' expenses on nitrogen, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay, so let's pick up first on the carbon in the soil. How do you keep, it sounds a great idea, but how does a farmer keep carbon in the soil?
Well, the short answer is easy, the longer answer is it's hard. So the short answer is that anytime you grow a crop and the residues, the leaves, the stalks, whatever, end up in the soil, that's carbon in the soil that wasn't in the air.
Right.
But why is it that farmers don't do that already? There's a variety of complicated answers to that, but the short-term answer is that if you're a poor farmer struggling to survive day to day, it's hard to think longer term. So we need to provide mechanisms and technologies that get farmers over that short-term hurdle to operate more sustainably going forward. By doing so in the long term, they'll actually be increasing productivity. Another way in which mitigation activities at the farm level can also be food security enhancing.
So you're saying that once a crop has been, I guess once they've taken the fruits from the crop, they should just leave the leaves and the stalks and whatever, and just sit there, and that is the carbon being soaked back into the soil.
Exactly. Or find ways to get it actually slightly below the surface, keeps it there even a little bit longer.
Okay, and in terms of nitrous oxide, have we gone too far with the amount of fertilizers that are being used in the soil? I know this isn't necessarily just a climate change issue. This kind of moves into the kind of biodiversity sphere, but have we gone too far?
Well, the question is, who is this we that you're referring to?
Yeah.
If you look at agricultural practices in the country that I was born in, the United States, or if you look at agricultural practices in China, I think you can almost inevitably say that we could reduce nitrogen use without having any effect on agricultural productivity. But if you go to Africa, You go to parts of sub-Saharan Africa where the rates of nitrogen application are 0 or below in some cases because we're actually extracting stuff that's in the soil, then it would certainly make a lot of sense from a productivity perspective and from a farmer income perspective to actually put more nitrogen fertilizer on the soil. So it's hard to make these global generalizations. Agriculture is really a place-based activity, and we need to be looking for place-based solutions that contribute to the many challenges that we face.
And I guess farmers, because it's such a hard job, they have to be quite stubborn, don't they? They have to be quite focused on their particular role. How open to advice are farmers, do you find, in general? And I know we can't generalize, but give us an idea of the ones you've worked with.
Well, I think the correct impression that one should take away is that farmers are like anyone else. They're interested in a better life for themselves. Yeah. They'll look at opportunities that they have. They'll consider them very skeptically because, after all, if you make a decision that's wrong and you're living at the edge of poverty, then it really can push you over. So farmers will be very skeptical about new technologies, but they'll also adopt them in a snap, in a heartbeat, if it makes sense for them to do so. And they will do that. They have done it, and they'll continue to do it in the future. One of the key messages actually then is we need to get more and better information into the hands of farmers for the challenges that they face today, but thinking about the fact that climate change will be a challenge that will become more and more of a problem for them looking forward in time.
Okay, and just one sort of final point in terms of agriculture, give us an idea about how these negotiations can directly affect the work you do and also the agricultural sector.
I think it's important that the negotiations that are ongoing now recognize both the adaptation needs of agriculture and the fact that that will have to be funded somehow, so a variety of funding sources for agricultural adaptation is really key. But I think it's also important for the negotiators to consider the role of agriculture in mitigation, both the direct emissions from agriculture, which are small in developing countries today, and that means it's a perfect time to adopt technologies that don't increase emissions, but also the important role that agriculture can play in mitigating, reducing, taking CO2 out of the atmosphere in particular that come from other sectors. So there are potential win-win solutions for agriculture both on the adaptation and the mitigation side. The role of the negotiators today must be to look for those. One key thing that would be nice to have happen at this set of negotiations is for the recognition that agriculture plays an important role, the need for more scientific information, and put in place that process under the substud that would allow for the gathering of that information, reporting it out so that it's in the hands of all the delegates when they consider what they're going to do going forward.